two.
Hello, my name is Crystal Washington. I'm a technology strategist and a futurist. And my best piece of advice that I can give is one that I've lived by for the past few years, which is I eat fear for breakfast every single day. So if you're not doing something that makes you terribly uncomfortable, there's a good chance you're falling behind and missing opportunities.
Wow, that's awesome advice. Do something that scares you a little bit, maybe a lot bit, every single day, which I think is a good place to really start a conversation here, my friend. It is, first of all, thank you for being here. I appreciate you a lot. So, hope all is well. It's good to see
Yeah.
you.
And anything for Phil. I mean, Phil, anyone who's watching us right now knows how amazing you are. I have adored you for years as a fellow speaker and really as a human. So it's my honor to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Back at you. Back at you. And we got together, what, 2 or 3 years ago now, which is
Yeah.
always fun to think about. We finally got to break some bread. So that was good. And we then connected over our love of technology, but not for technology's sake, which I think really makes you
Mhm.
different from a lot of the nerds out there that just talk about tech for tech's sake. Though you have to tell us, you have three phones, Crystal. What do you have three phones for?
Oh, you're making fun of me because I had to turn them all off before we started. No, I have an Android and I have an iPhone because I actually need both because I teach things that I need screenshots from both, right? Because those are the two major systems that people are using. And then I have a landline because that provides the best voice quality for phone calls with clients. So when I'm at home, which is all the time now, but before, I was on the road a lot, but I try to schedule calls for when I was in the office because it's just better call quality. You don't have to worry about someone saying, I can't hear you, or are you near an elevator? Or
Yeah, all those important things that for many years we took for granted, and many years we thought, oh boy, you have to be hardwired in for everything. Well, now that we're all working from home and we're
Mhm.
all, or at least more comfortable working from home, it's important to think about like, so what's different, right? How can we stand out? How can we be different? And I like what you said before we got started here, and that is if people are paying attention, if they're open to it, if they're willing to face fear, this is a really fertile time. So what does that mean to you, Crystal?
Well, if you think about times in history, specifically, let's look at the United States. When some of the biggest companies started, I mean, and they were started very small, or when some of the most, I would say, some of the most important shifts happened culturally, it was during times of great distress. And I think most of us would agree that 2020 fits that description for multiple reasons. I tell people within the first 3 to 4 months of this year, the foundation of how we understand the world as Americans shifted twice. Not only COVID, but with all the civil unrest, which what I call Human Rights 2020, because I had to call it something, right? And so it shifted how we look at everything. But in the midst of all of this, there are new needs. There are holes that are developing with people working from home and more people trying to deal with their children's educations, with mates driving each other crazy, with there being holes left in how businesses are or are not working very well internally right now. There are so many opportunities, and not all of them require a great deal of investment to exploit. And I mean exploit in the most positive way possible, right? But it does require us to move out of our victimhood. And when I say that, I'm not victim blaming. There are people who have been dealt horrible hands right now. But once you get out of it and you look at what you bring to the table, and then you start being open enough to notice those holes, you'll realize that there's so many opportunities that are really ripe for the picking for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so much opportunity, so much here. Really, really fascinating. So, really good stuff, Crystal. So, as we think about these opportunities, talk to me a little bit about the technology and how that plays in, how we don't have to invest real big.
Well, one of the things about technology right now is that we're all using it. And it's funny because, Phil, you speak on this, I speak on this. And I'm sure there are a lot of things we've been telling clients and audience members for years that some of them, there's always the minority that they go and do it and they get results. But then you're always going to have the people that are like, oh, one day, or, oh, I can't do that. It's for super smart people. And now some of those same people have emailed me laughing now saying, Crystal, I waited all this time. I wish I'd implemented what you said before because now I have to because of work. Or, oh, look, I can be on Zoom, or I can use this programmer. So I think the technology helps us connect right now because we're not connecting as much as in person. But what's imperative is not to just adopt technology for technology's sake, but look for those holes. Remember, we keep looking for where are the opportunities, where are the holes in connecting, and find technology that addresses those holes even in the sales process. So for instance, I'm doing a lot of consulting work right now for the financial services industry. And one of my clients, I'm creating an entire video series. Right now we're in post-production editing, where I'm taking these financial advisors through all the things they should be doing to build relationships when what they have is WebEx or Zoom or Skype or Microsoft Teams. But there's so many pieces of technology that allow your clients to feel closer to you. So focus on those technologies that are going to help you connect with people better, and that will actually offer almost a human touch, as crazy as that is. So you're looking for things that humanize the connection across technology. That's the technology you need, not just the newest, the shiniest, the blingiest.
Yeah, the technology that actually connects us. I think that's really important to think about. And I would argue often just the way that we use that technology is super important, which is where you come in and a lot of your work does. So let's talk about one or two tactics here that we can use regardless of whether we have StreamYard or Zoom or WebEx or whatever it is, GoToMeeting. What is one really big tactic that folks can use to connect more with their audience?
Well, right now, this is going to be very super basic, but it's probably the most effective thing I've seen. And that is start off by asking people how they are. Start a campaign for just reaching out to your contacts, to your past clients, and just saying, and you have to use your own language. Okay, so I can actually say things, you've been heavy on my heart. How are you? I can say that. That might not sound like your verbiage. We'll have to find what works for us. But what you will find, and what I have found that has been amazing, is that we are in such a culture of people saying power on, and we tend to denigrate people who show weakness, that there are a lot of contacts who no one's even asked them, how are you doing? And just giving them a chance to just vomit up whatever they have to say. And now I can't teach you how to care, but please care. Okay. So it is a strategy, but more so it's just you being a good human. And as you reach out to people and you ask them how they're doing, listen for ways you can help them outside of even what you do. So for instance, I have most of the time I work with associations and corporations, but one of my clients just happens to be Mennonite Church USA. Random. I don't know, but I do a lot of work with them and I enjoy the Mennonites. I'm not a Mennonite. And so they have a lot of educational resources. And so earlier in this year, I had a couple clients who they were just talking about what a hard time they were having with supplemental materials for their children, educating them at school. Some of the schools had dropped the ball and weren't really doing anything. And I'd refer them over to the Mennonite resources. That has nothing to do with what I do for a living, but it was just me listening and being a good human. And what I have learned in my clients who I've talked to in webinars and in person about this, who have used the strategy, is people then you're top of mind with them because you actually care. So again, please do care. And then they start to ask you, hey, well, can you help me with this? Or do you offer that? Or I've been thinking about this. So don't lead with trying to sell people right now. Lead with really encouraging those relationships. That's one. The second piece of advice is once you know what it is they need, or once you're listening to them, find ways to delight them. And that might be a link to Mennonite Church USA resources. It might be a cameo video with their favorite celebrity or social media star that's actually giving them a shout out. It might be a customized send out cards note where their picture's on the front, or you're referencing something, a funny inside joke. I don't know if I have this handy. I'm actually going to show you something.
Cool.
That I did plan on showing. But I did not plan on showing. And it's going to be slightly inappropriate, but I think we'll still be fine with it. So I had a client earlier on in this process, and we were just kind of exchanging conversation and, just kind of talking about the challenges. And this client in particular was having some challenges. But I reached out to them first and just really wanted to support them and found ways to do so. And in return, later on, when I was having a slight rough time, not with business was great, but psychologically, they sent me a little gift basket. And this card was in there. And I've had this card up in my office ever since, because whenever anything crazy 2020 happens, I look at this and laugh and feel better. And so this is the card that the client sent. Okay.
Things could be worse. You could have chlamydia. That's fantastic, Crystal.
And it's hilarious because this client, like, you wouldn't expect it. I mean, the client's very funny, but you wouldn't expect it. And so I've learned to address humor and find humor in things. And so, again, finding ways to delight our contacts. And right now, that might mean that we actually get a little more personal than we would have before. You know, I had a client I met with last month. They were breastfeeding while we were on the Zoom. It is what it is. Anything, just about anything respectful goes at this point, right? And so understanding that the rules that were in play before March of 2020 have shifted. And trying to pretend that they haven't, or trying to happy-go-lucky it through it, or continue your sales posts like nothing's going on, it makes us look not only out of touch, but more importantly, it shows our lack of humanity. People need to know we care.
Yeah, that's so interesting and so true. I mean, the whole know you care, right? That's not a checkbox in your social media or technology strategy. Mm-hmm. That's really a piece of who you must be. And I think before it was probably okay to maybe not care because we were just looking at outcomes, results, and they were easier to get. But now more than ever, we've really had to focus on the other person and really listen, because one of the things that I've found helps is to think about what else is going on in their life that could be distracting them from this answer right now. So if you, no matter what you're offering, whether it's a new app or a complete consulting solution or anything in the middle of that, what else is going on in their life, right? What is it personally that might be happening? To your point, breastfeeding, right? Could be chlamydia. It could be something anywhere in the middle there, but whatever it is, it could be really an amazing thing that might stop them in their tracks and say, whoa, right now might not be the best time. And if you try to power through that, if you try to push through, you're actually going to push them away. Mm-hmm. So we have to be present with them for that. So as you talk about that, right, you mentioned Cameo, which I think is hilarious, right? I've seen a lot of people use that to just do a little 15 or 30-second video. But what if our budget is really small? What if we maybe only want to spend 50 or so bucks? What give me a tech site that might be like that Cameo.
Well, I mean, you can actually get videos on Cameo for less than $50. There are some people that are less than $50. There are a lot of known YouTubers and Instagram. So yeah, you're not going to get people whose last name rhymes with, Bardashian, but there's still notable people that are highly affordable starting at like $25. So I just want to throw that out there. The other thing is Fiverr. One of my favorite things about Fiverr is that there's so many weirdos on Fiverr. And I mean that in the most gentle way, okay? Talented weirdos. And so if you want someone dressed as a costume of whatever historic figure, or doing a Muppet show with Jim Henson Muppets, which I'm sure they don't legally have the rights to do, in their voices, whatever you want, there's someone on Fiverr who can create some type of video performance for your client as well. Starting at $5, some of them might be $10, depending on the little upgrades you want or how fast. And so I think that's another great resource for video. But again, I mentioned send out cards as well as TouchNote. Those are two good options for customized cards. And don't underestimate the value of creating funny cards. You don't have to be amazing. If they mentioned that they have a fear of horses, or not a serious fear, but like some type of joke, putting a horse on there, and they love candy corn, putting a piece of candy corn on a horse's head and saying, here's the horse, whatever. It can be completely irreverent too. People need to smile. I'm sitting here every day looking at a card about chlamydia, people. Little things make a difference now. And so the technology that allows us to deliver those BombBomb, if you have a video system that integrates with BombBomb where you can create these very simple videos and it's instant. It's not like when you create a video, upload it to YouTube, put in a link. You can create a BombBomb video on the spot and it's ready to go and email it. I love BombBomb because those times where you really want someone to feel your energy when you want to address them. Maybe they're dealing with loss. A lot of people are dealing with loss right now around COVID. I have a lot of clients who've lost close family members. I had clients that were in the midst of all those fires that were happening on the West Coast. I actually had to do a presentation when those fires were raging, and some of the people on the call had been relocated onto this university campus, and I could see the orange haze out of the windows behind them, okay? Anything that helps people feel your energy, and again, email can be dry. I mean, don't get me wrong, I craft some pretty silly emails, but still dry. But if you have a video where you're talking to them and you're just saying, hey, I'm just thinking about you right now, that makes a difference. And then I also send a lot of customized gifts, but I understand budget matters. I've sent a gift to one client who she loved a particular football team. And so I found a Lego, customized Lego or a special Lego of her favorite person per her, tweets or whatever. And the Lego was not very expensive. And I had to also be mindful because she was in financial services. And so you can't get them expensive gifts anyways. And I'm the type of person that I aim to go way underneath the threshold. So if the threshold's $100, you're getting a $20, $25 gift from me, right? So I hope that kind of answers your question on what kind of technology. Those are just a few options. We said Cameo, Fiverr, TouchNote, Send Out Cards, BombBomb, all allow people to feel a little bit closer to you.
Awesome. Love those. I also like Thanks.io is a good pick. You can do Loom, you can do Vidyard. There's lots of good ones out there. I totally agree with you. Lots of tech out there that can help us do things in a little more fun way and more real time too. I mean, don't wait for a month to take advantage of that, right? Speed does matter, especially now when, the last 9 months, many people say has been the longest 10 years of their life. So we have to know that right now is a good time. So Crystal, you've done a lot with social as well, a lot of social media type stuff, and working in financial services. I mean, I've been in that space as well. I was a broker for a while, and it was to say it's highly regulated would be a massive understatement. So how can one in financial services be a little bit more effective with social and still stay within the rules?
So I do want to just make sure that I highlight, I'll answer the question, that about 70% of my business comes from financial services, real estate, and travel and tourism. So I kind of deal in those the most. And the other 30% is everybody, farmers, anything you can think of, carnival people, I've spoken to them. But when it comes to financial services, typically what I teach people is because I'm often speaking across firms. So like Barron's hires me for a lot of their events. If you're speaking to brokers and advisors across firms, they have different internal rules in addition to them needing to be compliant to the things that all of them need to. So for them, I tend to focus a little bit more on optimizing profiles for SEO. So that's your LinkedIn. Many of them can't really use YouTube, so I don't go too deep on that. But what I teach them is you use social media for insights. So I don't really talk about them posting a great deal unless it's a particular firm bringing me in for that. And usually I'll make them have their compliance people in the room. And this obviously was before COVID. So I tell them, nope, you put your compliance people in there, because what I don't want is to tell them something's allowed that you've told me is allowed and compliance to block them. Put them in the room. Now, with that, then that kind of, eradicates that problem. But when you're looking for insights, it's kind of like where I said that one client, I sent her the Legos. It allows you to build relationships with people because you see what they care about. You learn things about them. You learn cycles in their businesses. Some of them have business pages on Facebook. Some of them post personal things and they'll connect with you there. So I use it more to observe, and you'll also start to see trends. You'll start seeing people asking the same type of questions. When COVID first came, you hear the questions people have around a particular issue. Well, that informs you on what types of things you should be contacting your clients about as a financial advisor. So use it for insights more than anything else. Don't worry about if you can't post everything you want for compliance reasons. I know that they can't get testimonials or things like that. There's a lot of rules. That's okay. Don't even worry about posting that way. Post it to get information. Post it to see who your clients are connected to, where you might ask them for introductions, and not even through social media. You pick up the phone and say, hey, I noticed you're connected to Gary with blah, blah, blah. I've really been interested in talking to him. Can we set up a lunch? Or in this day and age, can we set up a Zoom lunch where I send delivery to both of you and we just chat a little bit?
Yeah, I like that. That whole Zoom lunch, right, with DoorDash or with Grubhub or whatever
Mhm.
makes it super easy now. If they're willing to give you their addresses, right? That's
Mhm.
always the question. You got to make sure you ask for that, verify that, trust but verify, asking for permission, I think
Right.
is solid. And then the idea of using it for insight, I think is so valuable. So many think, well, my customers aren't there, but
Mhm.
other human beings are, right? Even if your exact customers in there, other human beings are. So figuring out who is your ideal avatar, connecting with them so that you can see what they're talking about. So even if your customer doesn't ask a question, you could say, you know what, I've been paying attention here and I see that,
Yes.
of my business owners that I'm connected to on LinkedIn, this is what they're thinking about. Is this what you're thinking about? And maybe your customers are a couple weeks behind because if they're not on social, they're probably not bleeding edge, which means
Mhm.
you look like a futurist
Yes.
by just paying attention to the now. So talk to me about that, Crystal. I mean, futurism is part of your expertise. So
Yeah.
what does it mean to you to be a technology futurist?
So a futurist, I think, is oftentimes misunderstood. People think that they're psychics, right? So of course, when 2020 hit and people were like, "Oh, well, these futurists have to eat crow," no, that's not what futurism is. I don't have a crystal ball somewhere and I'm like making predictions. That's not how it works. Basically, futurists are people who look at the environment and they scan for signals. A signal can be a piece of data, any kind of information that makes you say, "I wonder what's happening here. That's interesting." So you start collecting these pieces of information, usually around your area of expertise. So mine is technology. If someone talks about healthcare futurism, unless it has more to do with consumer technology, I can't help you. That's not my area. And so you collect these signals. But here's where foresight, which is the practice of futurism, comes really into play. It's all about taking this data, taking these signals, forming insights. So this is when you start to kind of form conclusions or ideas around it. And now you look at what does the future people expect? And then from these insights, you blow out 2 or 3 alternative futures. And then you help your clients take action to prepare for all the different options. So I think Shell Oil was the first corporation that actually employed futurists. And what they do is when they're looking at a particular thing down the line, they're having their futurists look at, okay, but what if this happens or this happens? All it is having a plan A through D and making sure the actions you're taking right now are safeguarded around these other alternative futures. Now, there are times where you can have a black swan event. That's something that no signals are telling you exists. So, for instance, much of what's happening in 2020, people would consider black swan events, unless you were a social scientist or unless you actually were in the medical field and you were a specialist in infectious disease, because they did kind of say these things were coming at some point. So their futurists knew what they were talking about, and the rest of us were like, or we just didn't hear about it. So that's what futurism is. And everyone that's with us today can be a futurist, can practice foresight. Now, I'm not saying I'm not sitting here, like with a magic wand and woo. No, I mean, there's education behind this. There's courses, there's majors, there's but you can use futurist thinking. And you can do that in your everyday life. It's the difference between living on autopilot. So this is kind of what a lot of self-help books do. If a business lives on autopilot, it's not using forecasting. It's not using futurist thought or framework. But when you start looking at what are the possibilities here and how can I create plans to address these different options or to influence the future that we want, that's futurist thinking. And many of us do that every day in our everyday lives. And hopefully those that don't will do it even more. All that is taking charge of what's coming and making sure that you're influencing it based on all the things I just told you to go in the direction that you think would be best, or hopefully that's the best for humanity from your experience.
That's excellent. Excellent. I love that we can all practice foresight. Could take
Yeah.
a course. We don't need to be magicians or psychics or anything like that. I think
No.
that's super, super helpful. So, Crystal, as we're kind of wrapping up here, give me one thing that you see that's going to happen in the future, perhaps that we can help shape as the future comes at us.
Oh, there's so many things. But one of the things I think that we should address is the fact that as humans, our relationship to other humans is changing. And we have to decide what we want that to look like. On one hand, we're developing more trust with strangers. Think about this. When we were children, we were told, don't get into a car with strangers. If someone rode down the street that you didn't know with a bunch of TVs in a pickup truck trying to sell them to you, you'd be like, what's going on with there? But we use Uber and we use eBay, right? And it's all based on social rankings because now we can, see, oh, they have so many stars, so many people did business with them. We have that. On the other hand, we're more connected globally than ever before. Right now, we can contact just about anybody in the world with a 1 or 2 off connection. Okay. But let's pair that with the fact that there have been numerous studies that are showing people are becoming more and more lonely. If someone knocks on your door randomly right now, most people actually feel irritated. If someone calls you versus text, there's certain age groups that feel very irritated. Whereas when I was even a child, even though I'm a millennial, if someone came to your door and knocked and you didn't know who it was, you checked the door, it was likely company is what it was called, right? And then the company that you hadn't seen in so many years stopped by and everybody's happy and grandma has some food ready and papa's, we don't live in that world anymore. We don't know our neighbors as much. And so, people are saying we're becoming more disconnected. I don't agree with that. Our connection's starting to look different. And I think right now we're at this precipice where we get to decide, what do we want this to look like? And based on what we want it to look like, we have to shift how we are shaping laws around different types of technology and how we're teaching our children to interact with each other and not only just in person, but through technology.
Wow. I think that's so interesting. The book Bowling Alone was one of those seminal books by Sherry Turkell, I believe, or that was interesting, right, about the loneliness epidemic and how we're more connected but disconnected. But I love that you remind us that we always have a choice. We can choose how we deal with it, how we handle it, and all of that. So great advice as always. I love that you talked about facing fear because a lot of people are afraid to talk to strangers and be with strangers. So Crystal, if you had one last thing that you want to share with folks that maybe I didn't ask, or just to reinforce one insight that you had, what would that be?
That one last insight, there's a lot of things going on in the world, and I think it's very easy to get down on this year, which is interesting because most of us, if we go back to social media, the general agreement was 2019 was the worst year ever, and everybody was ready for 2020. Little did people know what was coming in 2020. And now there's people that are saying, oh, I can't wait till 2021. Look, we don't know what's coming in the future. I would say live in the moment now. And if there's an issue that needs to be addressed, you address it. I address it. For our clients, within our businesses, within our communities, on a very micro level, we have to do whatever's in our power to uplift and help each other. And that also influences our business decisions. It influences how we interact with our clients because we're looking out not only for humanity as a greater source, but our communities as well. So I just want to encourage everybody to feel empowered. If that kid down the street is falling behind in school and you can afford tutoring, or you can spend a few minutes creating a YouTube video, making funny sketches, showing them a math lesson they can go back and watch over and over again, let's just all do our part. That's what futurism is. It's taking action today to influence our future.
Awesome. We all can do our part to make the future better, one step at a time. Crystal Washington, you are amazing as always, friend. For folks to connect with you, just go to crystalwashington.com. Just like it sounds, all of her social media is there. You can learn from her. Thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate you making time for us today. You're the best. Whoop, whoop. Good times. Thank you.